I myself, Mahendar Reddy, Assistant Professor, welcome you all to the panel discussion on digital tourism and sustainable development goals. As part of the third Joint International Conference on Tourism, Hospitality, and Sustainable Development Goals, a virtual conference scheduled from 16th to 18th, 2022. This particular conference is organized by National Institute of Tourism and Hospitality Management, India, in association with People Are Culture, USA, and Wisdom University of Applied Sciences, Latvia, Lusofona University, Portugal, Luxor University, Egypt, Takoradi Technical University, Ghana, the Engineering and Pedagogical College of Dushanbe, Tajikistan, University of Birjan from Iran, College of Tourism and Service of Andijan, Uzbekistan, and Maulana Azad National Urdu University from Hyderabad in India, Jawaharlal Technological University, Hyderabad, India. Before I say a brief about the conference, I would like to introduce about the Institute, National Institute of Tourism and Hospitality Management, is jointly promoted by the Government of India and the Government of Telangana in Hyderabad in the year 2004. Institute endeavors for holistic development of all related sectors coming under the tourism and hospitality through the provision of education, training, research, and consultancy services. NITHM offers bachelor and master level degree programs and diploma and certificate programs. Coming to the conference, this is a third year that we are organizing the conference with this particular theme in association with several partner universities. The theme of the conference, tourism, hospitality, and sustainable development goals. And it is supported, as I mentioned, supported by the various institutions. The aim of the conference is to provide a platform to a wide range of scholars, policymakers, practitioners, and the other tourism stakeholders to discuss, debate, and deliberate on the role, issues, and challenges of achieving sustainable development goals through tourism and hospitality, approaches and practices of sustainable development goals in tourism and hospitality and related fields, and to make it more responsible and visible to the public. This will help the researchers across the field to come together and exchange the research and innovative ideas, the academic community, and the practicing entrepreneurs. As you all know that information and communication technology, the digital technologies plays an immense role in promoting sustainable tourism and also achieving several sustainable development goals. In that regard, we thought of having this particular panel discussion on digital tourism and sustainable development goals. For this, we have speakers or the panel members representing both the academia and the practitioners from various parts of the world, including India. We have Ms. Pier, Professor Stanislav Ivanova, Natalia Bayona, Lola Åkerström, Tathagata Neogi. Before we start the panel discussion, I would like to give a brief about the panel members. Ms. Pier is the founder of a website called People Are Culture and a new initiative called Flip the Lens, which aligns the interest of travelers and the host destinations through creating video content together about the local cultures. Meg has been engaged in telling stories for more than 30 years, an award-winning professional with a progressive 25 plus years career, blending expertise in writing, editing, interviewing, public relations, and brand building. Meg has a diverse set of credentials, a corporate career as the founding member of PR departments for 4 major financial service firms. Meg has been the recipient of several awards. Then we have a next panel member, Professor Stanislav Ivanova. Professor Stanislav Ivanov is working as a professor at and vice rector for the research at the Varna University of Management, Bulgaria, and director of Jangda Research Institute. Professor Ivanov is the founder and editor-in-chief of 2 major academic journals. One that is European Journal of Tourism Research, and the recently introduced journal called the Robonomics, the Journal of the Automated Economy. His research interest includes robonomics, robots in tourism and hospitality, the economics of technology, revenue management, etc. His publications have appeared in Annals of Tourism Research, Tourism Management, Technology and Society, and several other journals. His book, co-cited with Craig Webster, Robots, Artificial Intelligence, and Service Automation in Travel, Tourism, and Hospitality, was published by the Emerald Publishing Group in the year 2019. Then we have another speaker, Natalia Bayona, who is the Director of the Innovation, Education, and Investments at the Department of the World Tourism Organization. Natalia Bayona leads the innovation, education, and investment strategy of the World Tourism Organization, the United Nations specialized agency for the promotion of responsible, sustainable, and accessible tourism across the world. With a diverse background on politics, destination management, and business, she has become the first innovation director at UNWTO. She has introduced entrepreneurship and education as a key factor for tourism and development, and has positioned UNWTO as an recognized in the UN 2020 mapping of innovation, data, and digital capacities. Furthermore, she has joined the UN Executive Leadership Program for Sustainable Development led by the UN System Staff College. Colleague. Her work consists of identifying the most disruptive startups and investment projects and matching them with member states and leading corporations. As an advocate of youth and technology, she seeks to make entrepreneurs grow for a promising future in all regions. During the last 3 years, Natalie has developed 9 UNWTO startup competitions and 8 innovation challenges with outcomes such as more than 74 million US dollars in support for entrepreneurs and pilots of a safe travel. Moreover, she has designed the Tourism Tech Adventure Innovation Forums and co-created the UNWTO Tourism Online Academy, the pioneer platform for advancing the skill development for the sector in collaboration with most prestigious universities such as IE University, Cornell University, the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, currently with over 12,000 students. Furthermore, she has created the UNWTO Technical Committee on Tourism Online Education and acts as its secretary to ensure education is at the forefront to the global agenda. So this is a brief about Natalia Bayona. Then we have the other panel member, Lola Åkerström. Ms. Lola Åkerström is award-winning visual storyteller, international best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and travel entrepreneur. She has over 14 years of experience in providing enterprise solutions, interactive design, systems integration, content management, and UX UI development, and with 12 plus years domain expertise as a visual storyteller and thought leader within the travel industry. And we have another and the last speaker, and the panel member, Dr. Tathagata Neogi. Dr. Tathagata Neogi is the founder of the Immersive Trails, a purpose-driven company that makes travel and learning more accessible and enriching by translating in-depth ethical research into immersive in-person and virtual experience. He is an archaeologist by training with a PhD from University of Exeter from the United Kingdom. So this is about the bio of today's panel members. With this, I would like to request Meg to take over the session and start.
Thank you, Mahendar. And greetings from the US. On behalf of People, Our Culture, and Flip the Lens, it is a real pleasure to partner with the National Institute of Tourism and Hospitality Management to present this conference. And it is a privilege to moderate this panel of changemakers who are doing exciting and meaningful work in the digital tourism space. And I thought it might make sense to begin by asking, what is digital tourism? It's a widely used term that means many things to many different people. And today, our panel will break it down and we'll look at digital tourism through the lens of integrated, innovative ecosystems, automation technology, virtual experiences, e-commerce, and digital content partnerships. At the end of the day, effective digital tourism is about aligning the interests of host communities and of travelers. And without further ado, we'll begin the presentation with commentary from Natalia via video. Thank you.
Meg, if you have the video. Yeah, so there is a technical issue with Dr. Mahendar's laptop. So maybe you can move forward moderating the sessions, Meg.
Of course. Why don't we move to Stan? Stan, would you like to share your remarks about automation?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, sure. It will be. I will share my comments with pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a great honor to participate in this conference. And let me share the screen. So I guess you are seeing the screen. I will be talking about how do automation technologies contribute to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Of course, this is a huge topic that deserves probably several days of a whole conference by itself, and definitely a few books on the topic. And that's why I will try just to scratch the surface of this relationship and to outline only some of the directions. I would like to remind you about what the Sustainable Development Goals are. Yeah, we all know them, but as we see them, we see that some of them they are on individual level, some of them are on a macro level, and others are on planetary level, like for example, climate action. And then the question is, so what are the automation technologies? The automation technologies include a wide scope of technologies through which replace human labor, so that it is the technology that does the work. It is not the humans that do. So here we have robots, virtual, augmented, mixed reality, kiosks, voice-activated devices, chatbots, wearable, implantable devices, holograms, autonomous vehicles, and many other automation technologies. Some of these automation technologies are entirely digital, like chatbots. Others are technical, mechanical, with of course supported by artificial intelligence, like robots. While third make the connection between the physical world and the virtual world, like augmented and mixed realities. And also we have automation technologies that are relatively basic, like kiosks, which do not necessarily have artificial intelligence, and others which are much more complex, like voice-activated devices, virtual reality, robots, autonomous vehicles. Now, how can these automation technologies contribute to the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals? Many different directions, and definitely for each of the sustainable goals, we can write a separate book how these technologies can contribute. But more or less, these will be in the following directions. First, we talk about reduction of waste and of the use of resources. For example, through different sensors located in the hotel, in the restaurant, like movement detectors, which will increase the luminosity of the lights in the corridors when they detect movement. And otherwise the lights will be relatively dimmed. So this will save on electricity. Or robots which can be used to streamline the operations and eliminate some of the unnecessary activities. We can all these technologies, automation technologies, they consume a lot of electricity because they're digital. They need electricity in order to operate. So with these technologies, we can create demand for clean energy, which hotels, for example, can provide with let's say solar panels on their roofs. Also, we can use technologies to clean the water before and after the use in hotels. Or my favorite part, this is creating decent work environment. Often sustainability is focused on the environmental aspects, and we forget the human side, although the human side is extremely important. So here we talk about automating repetitive, dirty, dull, and dangerous tasks, which liberate time for the employees to focus on more revenue generating and more intelligent tasks. Also, these automation technologies, they can improve the accessibility of services. And here we talk not only about the physical accessibility of services, but also, for example, virtual reality. So people who cannot travel because of one or another reason, they can join the metaverse, and then they can see the different services, the different tourist resources, destinations. Or we can have automated translations, which will also make the services accessible. Or quality education. inclusion of technology-related modules in the curricula of tourism and hospitality programs. For example, 2 years ago in my university, Varna University of Management, we included one such compulsory module in the hospitality programs directly related with such technologies. And finally, when we take all these improvements, these and many others which I did not mention, they can, automation technologies can contribute to the sustainability of local communities and cities. For example, when they can make the traffic much easier. So instead of with the autonomous vehicles, and instead of everyone to have a vehicle in the city, we can have transport as a service. So there are many different ways, and in the long term, I do believe that automation technologies will contribute positively to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. So thank you so much, and I'm available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. I think we have a question at the end. So I now share Natalia's video.
Hi everyone, it's my pleasure to be here today with you. Today I have the honor to talk about the challenges that tourism is facing thanks to this pandemic. I have to say that the challenges of the tourism sector are the same before and after the pandemic. The thing is that COVID-19 has accelerated these challenges. I would start by saying that the 5 challenges that the tourism sector has are: first of all, innovation; second of all, education; third of all, investments; fourth of all, added value jobs; and fifth, or last but not least, sustainability. When we are talking about innovation, the main focus of our job is improving the tourism innovation ecosystem. I have to say that thanks to this journey, we need to improve the connection between governments, startups, investors, academia, of course, institutions, and the national governments. Today, I have to say that those connections have been improving the way we are innovating. Nonetheless, we need more pilot projects between startups and corporates. We need a more serious supply chain between providers and corporates that are buyers of those technologies that the startups develop. We need a more interesting venture capital culture. Just some facts and figures. The last year, $22 billion were invested in tourism startups. That's amazing because besides the pandemic, venture capital was increasing. Nonetheless, those entrepreneurs and those startups that received investment, 80% of them were based in the US and China, that are the more mature innovation ecosystem. So my question here is, what is happening with the other countries? What is happening with the tourism innovation ecosystem? We need to improve more in order to bring those capitals to emerging markets as Latin America, Asia Pacific, and African countries. That's why our role through startup competitions, challenges, innovation forums that are the UNWTO Tourism Tech Adventure Forums are part of the key strategies in order to foster a more mature tourism innovation ecosystem. Another fact, I don't know if you know, but from the 100% unicorns that are enterprises that are valued on more than $1 billion, only 5% are from the tourism sector. We need to help the internationalization process of the entrepreneurs. We need to connect them with investors, with corporates, with governments, etc. Second great challenge that we have, education. I don't know, once again, if you know, but this is really important. Tourism is the top employer of women and youth. Nonetheless, 50% of the young, talented minds working in tourism only have secondary skills. If we want to develop a high-level economic sector, we need to improve education. And digital education is here to stay. Thanks to digital education, we can scale up the way people are educated. Our aim this year is to have at least 30,000 new students in our UNWTO Tourism Online Academy. And how can we do this? Of course, developing partnerships with top universities. It doesn't matter if they are focused on managerial or vocational skills, but we need to improve the way people get a certificate in order to have a formal career and a formal professional path in the tourism sector. And of course, if I'm talking about innovation, that is the sector for youth. If I am talking about tourism, that is the sector of youth, of course, innovation and education has to be aligned if we want the third challenge, that is added value jobs. As I already said, 100 million jobs are under risk thanks to this pandemic. But of course, if we don't have people with a professional certificate, if we don't get the tools to help them to access, how we can preserve those jobs. So that's why inside our public policies from national governments, in our commercial strategies from the corporates, from the big hotel chains, from the big airlines, from the SMEs, in every single company that is working in tourism, every single company needs to have an innovative mindset, but of course, a strategy to train their employers to be better and to develop what always the people that work in education says, to be a lifelong learner. It means to study, to learn, to relearn, to unlearn, but we need to help people to gain new skills, skills on technology, skills on big data, skills on how to measure and how to deal with artificial intelligence. But on the other side, to deal with humanities, because this is the more human economic sector. So of course, we need a hybrid model between bringing leaders full of commitment, of communication skills, on political skills, but on the other side, we need hard skills as well. And that combination will help us to create a high-level economic sector. Fourth of all, of course, we need investments, but not any kind of investments, green investments. Why green investments? As you have seen, tourism decreased by 75% during 2020. I have another fact. Foreign direct investment decreased 75% as well. So if we want investors back, of course, we need economic incentives, tax incentives, and everything related to political and legal stability with, of course, a very serious framework. But our aim in the UNWTO is to promote green investments, to promote that investors bring their capital to create sustainable cities, more modern cities, but of course inclusive cities, inclusive destinations, inclusive amusement parks that are full of commitment with the environment, with technology, with the human beings, and of course that thanks to their investments we can create added value jobs focused on the power of tourism. That's why we have been partnering with the International Development Bank, with the IFC, and with other international financial institutions, because we know that together, through a legal framework, through a political stability, and of course, with a multilateral message on what we know that will recover the sector again, we will have a very powerful message, and we can help investors to develop a tourism investment culture thanks to this framework. And last but not least, of course, sustainability. Most of the people think that being sustainable is about working with the environment and for the environment. And to be honest, being sustainable is not only talking about the environment, it's about at least working with communities, working with the most vulnerable people, working for inclusion, using technology for good, and of course, to take care about the environment. So, of course, after this pandemic, I have learned, and I know that you all have learned about how sustainability need to be part of our lives. So if we develop a more sustainable framework where innovators bring solutions for a more sustainable development, if we bring green investments, if we create curricula inside the institutions in order to promote sustainability, and last but not least, if we add value through our jobs in order to take care and to give back to the community, thanks to the tourism sector, we are using the sector to become from important to relevant. I know that today you will have a lot of conferences, but I would like to end with this final message, that is, the responsibility of recovering the tourism sector is from all the tourism ecosystem. Is not only the responsibility of the UN, WTO, is not only the responsibility of the governments, it's not only the responsibility of the private sector. We all need to recover the tourism sector. To recover the tourism sector, responsibility is part of our job, and educating people, improving innovation, working on added value jobs, and developing a more modern, sustainable, and innovative tourism will help us to recover this sector again and to lead by example by using resilience and by using this high-level network, that is the human network, in order to improve the way people live, the way people travel, and the way people are educated. Thank you so much and enjoy the journey.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today.
I'd like to thank Natalia and Stan for their macro views of digital tourism. And I think they really set the stage for the two presenters that will come next. And first of those will be Tathagata, who will share a very compelling case study of how digital technology is being innovated and executed. And so with that, I'll turn over the podium to Tathagata.
Thank you, Meg. Thank you, everyone. And I hope all of you had or are having a very good day. So I'll share I have shared my screen already. I'll start my presentation. There we go. Just a second. Yeah, right. There you go. So I'm Tathagata. I'm the co-founder of Immersive Trails, and Immersive Trails started as Heritage Walk Calcutta in 2017 to make cultural heritage accessible for everyone through well-researched immersive experiences. So my background is I am an archaeologist by training, and so my wife is an anthropologist by training. So we decided to launch this in Calcutta, which is my hometown and which a city that my wife loves. So we left our academic jobs. We thought that this needed to be done for tourism. And so we left our jobs, founded the company, and then COVID-19 hit in early 2020. So all we faced were lockdowns and stoppage of tourism. The industry was completely wiped out, as all of you here probably know. It was affected in a big way, lots of jobs lost and stuff. So as a very small company, we realized that this is challenging, but this could also be an opportunity for us to look at what technology is available to us and what we can do with the existing technology to make our tours more accessible to people, as well as reach out to the local communities and make sure we help them with the technological knowledge that we have or we innovate based on existing technologies to make some livelihood for them as well. So apologies about our dog barking. Um, so um, so what we did was we took this opportunity COVID-19 that COVID-19 provided to pivot to a virtual platform to make our tours more accessible for a global audience. We used Zoom and Prezi and the video embedding features and all of that. To do that, we've invested on buying a 360-degree camera to make our tours more immersive and stuff. And this has not just benefited immersive trails, but also the members of the local communities, because we organize training programs with the members of the local communities in various places that we do our tours, so that they can start co-creating these tours themselves. They can become actual stakeholders in the process, and in the process of co-creating these tools, they can become more resilient to COVID-19 disruptions and get some income out of these. So we are now building a virtual experiences platform, like it's a screenshot that you see on the right side of the screen. And this platform will uh, showcase tours co-created by partners of the tourism community throughout the world, and also by members of the community who depend on tourism for their livelihoods. So what we also did in terms of training the local community is we focus, as I said, focus on co-creation. So the way that we do it is members of the local community, we believe, are key stakeholders in the process, and they need to be empowered as co-creators and leaders of local experiences. So as outsiders in a local community, say if I'm going to a village, a craft village, then we believe at Immersive Trails is the craftsmen there, they are the main stakeholders in this process of tourism, and they should create experiences based on what they want to showcase about their own community, about their own backyard, rather than me as an outsider going there and imposing my views and create an experience out of that. So I believe that that is the way forward for us at Immersive Trails, and that is why we are providing these training programs for the community members so that they can become active stakeholders and create experiences, immersive experiences for an audience that is spanned across the globe. So we don't have the conscriptions of space and time. These can be viewed over time as and when the time permits as well. So this is done through virtual multilingual training programs so that the local community members can be taught how to create engaging experiences of their backyard. And now we are starting in-person training programs as well. We have partnered with West Bengal Tourism, and we are partnering with several colleges and universities to start in-person training programs as well for places where technology may not be as accessible. And we believe that travelers are looking for more in-depth, localized learning experiences led by local communities. And that is the future of tourism, and empowering communities to make themselves visible online is a part of the training program. So we train them how to create a website, how to do their social media, how to start a business. So we are a small startup, but we are also trying to create many more startups through that. Also, what we are creating something called the Culture Box, which is aimed at empowering traditional craft communities to make their own products visible online. So what we saw by traveling through different villages during the pandemic in the Bengal countryside, Indian countryside, is that several craft communities traditional craftsmen are in very bad shape. Their families have suffered heavily due to the COVID-related stuff. So many of them have actually left their traditional crafts, like this gentleman on the right on the photograph that you see. His name is Siddhartha Nondi. He is from a traditional family of craftsmen who carves conch shells, beautiful conch shells. And so COVID forced him to leave his traditional livelihood, find job in a factory, migrate to South India, which is about 1,000 miles away from home, find a job in a garment factory, and then try to manage his life. And he is the last one of the last members of this conch shell carving community that is still alive. When the lockdowns loosened up, he came back home, and that's when we caught him, like when we found him at his house, carving some conch shells according to orders. But what we saw is that because they don't have any representation online into this global marketplace, they could not showcase their craft and sell their craft online because of the lack of this knowledge and support. So Immersive Trails' Culture Box is an initiative that we started during the pandemic, which trains local craftsmen to showcase their craft online and reverts much of the profit made per sale back to the craftsman, because craftsman has to come first. And much of the profit, because it's their product, it has to go back to the community. So with that, I pass the baton over back to Meg. Thank you very much, everyone. And if you have any questions, want to discuss something, then I'll be happy to take them at the very end. Thank you.
Thank you, Tathagata. That was a terrific example of using the innovative mindset that Natalia spoke about to empower local communities to drive their tourism destiny. And that cues up nicely our next speaker, Lola, who will also share her innovation in terms of connecting travelers and local artisans around the world. Lola?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Meg. And I am excited to be here with you all. It's a huge honor for me. So I'm going to share my screen now. And let us see. All right. So Meg, let me know if you see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, we can.
So I am Lola Akinmade Åkerström. I am an author and a travel entrepreneur based here in Sweden. And I am also the co-founder of Local Purse, which allows you to shop the world live. And Local Purse also meets 6 of the UN Sustainability Goals. So what is Local Purse and what do we do? So we are a web-based platform that combines live cultural experiences with live video shopping. So blending those two. And we're a very minimal footprint startup that provides maximum impact travel. So how did we get here, right? Because before the pandemic, Local Purse did not exist. We all know what happened. When the pandemic hit, the travel industry lost over $4 trillion, over 100 million jobs were lost. And part of the people that lost their jobs were local guides, experienced certified guides who no longer had jobs, as well as local artisans and cultural vendors, people that preserve traditions and crafts who rely mostly on tourism, lost all their income. And for me, the reason I got into this space is, as a visual storyteller, I focus and specialize on culture and cultural traditions and preserving those kind of arts and crafts legacies in different communities. So one thing that happened, even though the travel industry came to a standstill during the pandemic, one thing it showed us is the need for innovation, right? Because the travel industry was one of the last few industries where we actually have to be there physically in person for the industry to operate. I mean, other industries have already started kind of digitalizing and moving things that could be moved online. You know, the pandemic kind of accelerated the future of work, which is remote work. So the pandemic introduced us to the future of travel, which is more, virtual experiences to make the space more equitable and more accessible. But it also introduced us to the future of retail, which is live video shopping. And this trend is actually a macro trend that started out of China, out of Asia, that's now kind of moving across the world and taking not only the retail industry by storm, but other industries as well. And the timing is perfect because the pandemic has helped change our behaviors when it comes to online shopping and online experiences. And so this macro trend is now riding on our collective behaviors where we would rather just order something online than walk next door to go pick it up from the shop, right? So that's a collective global consumer behavior shift. And so that is pretty much what LocalPass is. LocalPass combines kind of that future of travel, of virtual experiences with the future of retail, so that travelers can actually book experiences with local guides, local artisans. These are live one-to-one experiences. The guides share about the culture, share about kind of what's being preserved, meet the artisans, and the customer can buy the item dynamically on the fly. So you can actually point and say, oh, I want to see that closer. Can you show it to me? Okay, the guide takes a picture, sends the information, and right away through the platform, it's so dynamic that the customer gets the information and can add it to their cart. So that is kind of what LocalPass does. And the reason, we kind of created this is not only as a painkiller to kind of help, but to create this long-term vitamin for the travel industry, where there's some experiences that can be moved, online. Yes, it will never replace being there in person, going through the souks of, Marrakesh, or going through the bazaar in Istanbul. But what it can do is at least give you a preview, right? It gives you a preview. You can go and experience virtually and then travel, but then you can buy things remotely. You don't have to bring it back. And so the whole point of LocalPass is about equity. I think that's what lies at the core of what we're doing, because before the pandemic, the travel industry wasn't as equitable. It still isn't, but now moving out of the pandemic, now it's going to be opening up space for local communities, to be able to create sustainable sources of income, to be able to start accessing a market virtually that was probably not accessible to them before. So that is what LocalPass does in a nutshell. We are still a very young startup, but yeah, so thank you.
Thank you, Lola. That was a really compelling case study of innovation that empowers local artisans while connecting them with travelers. So thank you so much for that. I am now going to share my screen, and bear with me here. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. I'd like to share a case study with you on the ideation process and how I came to co-found Flip the Lens with Mahima Gopal, which was a process of connecting the dots. And Mahima and I both feel strongly that for tourism to succeed, there needs to be alignment between the interests of travelers and community hosts. And we saw the internet as a modern era Silk Road. And just by way of background, Mahima and I came to work together when she interned with me as part of her Masters of Tourism program with USI. Mahima and her fellow USI interns created branding campaigns for the destination of their choice that featured many video documentaries on local cultural standard bearers. And Mahima and I felt this idea had real potential. And so it was the first of many dots that would begin to connect. The next dot was the awareness that the over-tourism phenomenon had many destinations questioning the type of tourists they were attracting. And at the same time, there began an awakening among local communities that they had choices about how they marketed and to whom. The next dot that we connected was that travelers care about host communities. I think during the phase of over-tourism, there became some animosity and some feelings that travelers and host communities were perhaps in conflict. And what we've found is that while over-tourism certainly brought to light some egregious behavior by travelers and by some travel companies, there was real and meaningful evidence that COVID had shifted travelers' priorities. Recent surveys by Booking.com and G Adventures offers data that made clear that the majority of travelers want their visit to benefit their host community. Dot number 4, consumers rely heavily on online information in choosing their destination. Significantly, the online information that has the most impact is user-generated content, not influencer content and not marketing content. And at the same time, travelers are heavy content creators. 97% of millennials share photos to social media while traveling. Dot number 6, and this one probably needs no elaboration. Many destinations, particularly those that are rural and emerging, need digital airtime. Another dot we tied in was that there is an entire niche travel market that already exists around imagery, art, and documentation of travel. The 7th dot was the recognition that the desire to create art and documentation of travel experience is not new, and it will not go away, but the format has changed. According to Cisco, video will account for 82% of all internet traffic in 2022. YouTube is not just a video sharing platform. YouTube is a search engine, second only to Google. And here we come to a significant dot. There are 37 million YouTube channels. What does that tell us? What it tells us is that we are all storytellers. We are all creators. We are all influencers. Telling stories is in our DNA. This slide shares a meaningful data point. Roughly 47 million online creators consider themselves amateurs. They do it for the fun of it. And Mahima and I thought this merited further exploration. We did a survey on LinkedIn that showed us anecdotally that there's a tremendous appetite to make videos about culture. So now the dots are really connecting. Travelers want to forge connections with local people and the destination of their choice and make videos. Meanwhile, destinations are seeking the right kind of travelers, and which means engaged and regenerative, and they want online exposure. That sounds like a marriage made in heaven. And thus, the concept for Flip the Lens was born. And we are now well into development and looking to launch in the near future. And now I'll just tell you a little bit about the Flip the Lens concept. We seek to bring together travelers, tour guides, and local cultural standard bearers to collaborate and together to create many documentaries about the culture of the host community. In the Flip the Lens Culture Correspondent Program, guides play a meaningful role that starts well before the traveler arrives and continues well after the traveler has gone home. This translates into a relationship rather than a transaction. In the Flip the Lens model, guides conceptualize the video that the traveler will be making. They provide access to local cultural practitioners who are willing to share their way of life in a film. They conduct translation as necessary. They provide grounding in the history, meaning, and nuances of a cultural practice. They manage the logistics and follow through, and they affirm the accuracy of the video content before it is published. Needless to say, this translates into more revenue in the pocket of the guide, part of which, of course, will go to the cultural standard bearer for their time and expertise. Part of Flip the Lens's role is to vet travelers, and one of the ways we plan to do that is by requiring that they commit to a pledge that we have created that has 4 values: respect, humility, identification, and collaboration. Videos created by these collaborative teams will be published on the Flip the Lens YouTube channel, which we envision as sort of a BuzzFeed with BBC-like content. In conclusion, we are all creators and we are all storytellers. And I believe that cultural tourism in particular has the potential to be a very powerful social and economic engine that can align the interests of travelers and host destinations and manifest all of the global goals. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen. And now I'd like to begin the discussion portion of our program. And what I thought might be interesting to look at is to ask our panel members to look ahead to 2030, the target date for the SDGs to have manifested, and make a prediction on what they think the future will hold by 2030 for the SDGs. And I'd like to start with Stan.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Fantastic question. Looking at the 17 sustainable goals, what I think is that probably these 17 goals, they will be achieved at a different, to a different degree. Probably those that are more related to the environment will be and can be easily operationalized, like clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy. They will be easier to achieve. Others like industry, innovation, infrastructure also will be easier to achieve. While others like the social, the ones that are more related to the social aspects of sustainability, like quality education or decent work and economic growth, probably they will not be achieved to the degree that we would like. Definitely, there will be a significant progress in terms of gender equality, and also probably towards the reduced inequalities on a global scale, but probably we will need much more progress in terms of peace, justice, and strong institutions, and on climate actions. So in short, 17 different velocities, 17 different degrees of achievement of these goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. That's an interesting perspective. And I guess I would, say that my response is intuitively that we're all committed to hopefully a healthier planet. And when it comes to other items on the SDGs, we may have not such a unified viewpoint. So that was great. Tathagata, I'd love to hear your views on, what you predict the state of the SDGs will be come 2030.
So I think what is needed is obviously more collaboration between domain experts in various domains in tourism, because I think there is, like, before the pandemic, a lot of us were working in silos, and I think the pandemic has shown that that's not the way to go. And so that's what my expectation is will happen. And also, I think the importance of co-creation and importance of the communities that's coming. By communities, I mean both traveler community and the local communities. I think that connection is becoming and will probably become more important and stronger as we go along. So these are my two insights.
That's great. I couldn't agree more with you, Tathagata. And Lola, your thoughts?
No, absolutely. I think Stan and Tathagata have pretty much covered a lot of what I'll be thinking in terms of reaching these goals for 2030. But I think just kind of like what Stan said, a lot of the low-hanging fruit of infrastructure, those are the ones that are probably going to be easier to meet, because it takes a while to change a culture or to change a way of thinking about things around gender equality, and things like that. So the social SDGs, those goals are going to be the other ones, and that's where the collaboration comes in. That's where being able to learn from each other and setting different examples, working with different domain expertise, like what Tathagata said, can help. But I think that's what's probably going to happen, the infrastructure, because once that develops more, then there's going to be a lot more reduced inequalities. It's going to be able to open up and create more sustainable communities. It's going to help with kind of the whole supply chain and the things that's needed to make communities more independent, right? And so yeah, there's so many thoughts around it. But again, like Stan said, the low-hanging fruit will be those kind of infrastructure goals. The more difficult ones will be gender equality, even though I live in the most egalitarian region in the world, which is the Nordics, they're still having issues and still discussing, right? So yeah, so those are my thoughts around this.
Those are great thoughts, Lola. And I will just share my 2 cents, which is that, if we're talking about innovation, obviously a part of that is incubating ideas. And I would put forth that the COVID pandemic is in many ways replicating what preceded the birth of the Renaissance and the Age of Enlightenment, and the catalyst for those centuries of tremendous expansion of ideas and global cooperation and intercultural cooperation was the Black Death. It was the plague. Really required people to question beliefs, question ways of doing things, and also precipitated the creation of many major commerce networks like the Silk Road. And so my view, which may be naive or you could say optimistic, is that because of what we've all been through as a collective and as individuals over the past 2 years, that we are going to, have a massive acceleration in ideas and the awareness that we are all interconnected. I mean, if the pandemic taught us one thing, it's just how very interconnected we are. And so my hope is that, now that, God willing, this is coming to an end or tapering off, we'll be able to process everything that we've learned and put into motion all the ideas that have developed during this incubation period. So now I know that we have some questions from participants and attendees, and I will turn the platform over to Mahendar to field those. Thank you very much to everyone who participated. And Natalia's global perspective was wonderful to have. She couldn't be with us today because of a prior commitment. But I want to thank Stan and Tathagata and Lola for what was just a fabulous collective presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mahendar, I'm sorry, I believe you're muted. Just barely. You're still muted, Mahendar.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Lola, the question is, how do you think the implication of such digital experiences can be, look forward in underdeveloped countries?
Absolutely. And that is actually the core of why we also develop Local POS, because it supports speedy onboarding. So think about it. Most of the artisans in different, maybe underdeveloped countries do not have their own e-commerce sites. It's working mostly with cash, one-to-one face with the customer. And that's why we vet certified guides or work with artisans that actually go meet the vendors and then create the e-commerce on the fly. So they don't have to have the infrastructure. They don't have to, everybody mostly has a cell phone, all of this works, via mobile technology. And then we just take a picture of the product, the price, and then through our platform, makes it very easy to share this information with the customer on the fly. And so whoever owns the experience in our system is responsible, right? So of course they need to be able to work with a local courier to send it, like a DHL, UPS, get the products to the customer. We have all of that integrated in, but for the local guides, the local artisans, they don't have to worry about creating their own e-commerce infrastructure, because it's just down to taking a photo of their product, and then we kind of handle the rest. And so that was actually the reason why, because for us, equity is at the core. We're trying to make it more equitable. And so when the industry went down, most of the kind of segments that rebounded were, airlines, hotels, but people weren't talking about the artisans in the markets in the corners. And that's where kind of local post, the idea for local post was born. How can we reach them in a way that's very, accessible and easy, and they don't have to kind of change too much of their workflow? So absolutely.
Yeah, great. So next, I would like to put a question to Professor Stanislav. So Professor, what is your perspective on loss of employment and loss of human touch when it comes to the adoption of automation and robotics in tourism and hospitality?
Thank you. This is a fantastic question that is usually raised when we talk about automation. I would say that many companies there in tourism and hospitality, they are forced to use automation, not because they want it, but because they are forced to do, because there are not sufficient number of employees to do. And in tourism, what we will see is that many of the back of house operations, those that do not involve customers, will be automated, while this will allow the employees to focus more on the front of house operations with the involvement of the customers, and to pay more attention to service to customers. So at the end of the day, it may turn out that automation is not replacing hospitality, but automation is reviving hospitality, because it will allow tourism employees to pay more attention to the customers, because these technologies will be able to automate many of the dirty, though dangerous, repetitive tasks. If we talk about replacement versus enhancement, currently all these automation technologies, they more or less enhance the employees. Yes, in the long term, there will be a significant replacement effect, substitution, but also we have many jobs that are created by automation technologies. So I don't see the contradiction between automation and hospitality. Definitely, they can work together.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for your insights. The next question is from Dr. Neeraj to all of the panel members. And the question is, do you need the global synergy to achieve these SDG goals? If yes, how do you, come together to achieve these goals from a technology perspective?
Okay, can I join again?
Sure. This question is open to...
Yeah, because I feel very close to this question. Definitely, we need international cooperation in order to achieve these global sustainable goals, because some of them, they require global cooperation, like climate change. Others can be solved on a local level, like infrastructure. But others require really a global cooperation. How we can do it? We have to change the cultural microchips in our brains. And Europe is a fantastic example in this. For centuries, European countries were fighting with each other. The two deadliest conflicts, the two world wars, started in Europe. But after the Second World War, European countries found way to work together in a peaceful way, sacrificing part of their national sovereignty and transferring it into supranational organization, what is currently the European Union. In other areas, in other geographic areas, there are also some examples. And probably at one point, people will need to understand that they are first people, after that they are citizens of a particular country. And we share the same problems. And the fact that one country is achieving fantastic results in protecting the environment does not mean that the earth altogether, people altogether are improving the environment, because atmosphere doesn't have national boundaries. So that's why we need to work together. So transferring part of the national sovereignty to supranational organization is inevitable, and it will go, and this will happen in the future, regardless whether we want it or not. This is the path. This is the way. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Stan. Other panel members, you're open to share your perspectives on the same question if you're.
Well, I will just chime in with a thought that I believe what the pandemic has given us an opportunity, in that you can't fix a problem that you don't know you have. And the pandemic has really brought to the surface the level of insidiousness in terms of our inability to cooperate. And while it's been very painful, it's very clearly presented what we need to focus on, and it's going to be a process. And so I would say that we do need to work together, and that's become very clear. And we now have a very strong call to action, and hopefully that will begin to play out.
That's a valid point, Meg. So I would like to put another question to Dr. Tathagata from Simran again. So she had recently visited Odisha, and she had to visit, she happened to visit the UNESCO World Heritage Site, Konark Temple. There was an interpretation center where tourists can understand the history of that particular site. But the local guides who are working at that UNESCO site are not happy about the interpretation center, because that is kind of, hitting their job. So what is your perspective on this issue?
Thank you. That's a great question, and that's very close to this is something that's very close to my heart. I think what we do wrong in terms of, and I apologize for being critical about this, but what we do wrong in terms of digitization in tourism is we do not involve the local community in the planning process. The local community members, guides, and others in the local stakeholders in the planning process. So I don't think we need an Amitabh Bachchan to read out the scripts. I don't think we need us to hire a celebrity by paying them millions of dollars to read out the script that is already set. I think the guides actually know the place better, and they have been doing it for sometimes for generations, sometimes all of their lifetime. So I think it would probably be like the way that we want to approach it. This is to provide training to the guides to come to that level where they can do the narrations, they can curate the experiences themselves virtually, and then that way they have a sense of ownership of the technology as well. Technology is nothing distant anymore, and then they can get a share of the revenues that you get from selling that technology to the visitors. So that is my perspective, and that's how we want to work, and at Immersive Trails, and that's how our virtual experiences platforms are going to work. So, I mean, is how I would approach it, and I think this is something that we do wrong by not acknowledging the presence of the other stakeholders, and that's why replacing the job scenario comes in. So that's yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Tathagata, that is a valid point, that we should be looking the participation of the host communities for a successful tourism in any destination. The next question is from Mr. Srinivas. So I think this question is something similar to what Tathagata just highlighted, that maybe Lola can try to answer this. So do you feel any challenges while training the local communities, since you will be using digital technologies and digital equipment, right? So there might be communities who are not familiar with such technologies and gadgets and other equipment. So how do you tackle such kind of issues, especially from countries that are not familiar with all the modern technologies?
Absolutely, it's a great question, and I would answer it in the context of local POS and what we're doing, which has to do with shopping, right? The biggest challenge we are facing is cash, right? And how long people are willing to wait to be paid. Because when you go to the market or to the bazaars, you're transacting mostly in cash right away, it's immediate. But when you start moving artisans to a more digital platform, sometimes it takes them maybe 2 weeks for them to get their payouts. So it's trying to change, or at least show the benefits, that this in the long run is going to be better. It's going to help your business scale quicker. Trying to communicate that is a challenge because people are used to getting their cash right there on the spot. And so that's how we are working with local guides, that maybe that's something we're going to build into local POS, where there is kind of like a POSer where the guides will have the cash as they go into the markets, but then like check in and out. So there are many ways we can expand the startup based on the local communities and how things currently work, because we're not building from the top down. We're actually building from the bottom up. Okay, this is how it's working, or maybe this isn't working right. How do we adjust it so it works right? So that kind of education, those are the real challenges on the ground. And also, and I think Tathagata can attest to this, being a in-person guide versus being a guide in a virtual forum is very different. There's the training on being engaging, of pulling out some charisma, or keeping your viewer not entertained. I don't like using that word because you're not entertaining them with your culture, but keeping them engaged. So there's a lot of education that goes around, not only just creating and sharing virtual experiences, but even with what we're trying to do, convincing people that yes, you're going to get paid, from when you've been paid on the spot, traditionally. So those are some of the challenges that we face.
Thank you, Lola. So there is one more question from a participant. Though the question is, it is about ecology, environment, but we would like to know the technology perspective of this question. So what is green investment in tourism sector in SDGs framework? So anyone has, this is open to every panel member.
I'm not completely sure I understand the question.
So his question is, what is green investment in tourism sector from a SDGs perspective? Of course, it is more of a environmental or ecology, side of, investment. But yeah, maybe we can ignore, as
May
it is
I?
not very. Yeah, Professor Stan.
So,
Sure.
as far as I understand the question is about what will be, let's say, the green technologies in which tourism companies can invest in order to achieve the sustainable development goals. This is how I interpret the question. So definitely any type of technology that leads to the decrease of use of different resources. So, for example, solar panels that can be installed on the top of the roofs of the hotels, or if you put movement detectors in the corridors. So, or if you install if you install systems within the hotel rooms where the guest needs to put the card in a slip in order to activate the electricity, or if you put water aerators in the sink so that you decrease the consumption of water. So I would personally consider this as green investment in the tourism sector. And all these, they will contribute to the decrease of resources. And of course, there might be many others more. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
I think that I would just share that this may not be directly answering the question, but if you define green as meaning sustainable, and thinking strictly in terms of flip the lens and how that can be deployed as a tool to foster sustainability, and the objective is to make films about cultural practices of different parts of the world, certainly there could be a whole series on what individual cultures do that is traditional or indigenous or even contemporary in terms of sustainable practices, and sharing those out via the Flip the Lens YouTube channel makes accessible, to the globe what different cultures are doing to foster sustainability. I'm not sure if that directly answers your question, but it's a thought that occurs to me.
sure, Meg. Thank you. So I have one more question to Professor Stan, personally. I mean, this is a personal question. So we all know the European Union initiated this smart tourism capital, program. Do you think it is a really good model that can be replicated to other countries, where the countries can encourage the states and provinces to compete to, introduce technology at the tourism destinations?
Yeah, thank you. Fantastic question. I have to admit that I'm biased towards this program in a positive way, because I'm one of the evaluators of it, so of the applications. So definitely, I strongly support other regions in the world also to have such programs. Definitely, it provides visibility to the to the capitals to the cities that are selected, and even if the cities they are not selected, the evaluators, the evaluation panel in which I'm a member, provides detailed feedback on which the destinations can work on in order to improve the smartness of the tourist offer that they have. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So I would like to handle the session to Dr. Mahendar now. So he will take forward the session.
Yeah, in fact, we thought of closing this, but yeah, we'll take last two questions that we have. One is about, the question is on what is, particularly how many countries are following a serious these SDGs. But I know that Stanislav already answered from the European perspective, the European Union perspective. But yes, I have a message from the participant that why not Asian countries or other countries. I would like to know the perspective from Tathagata as well as Pier, and also from Lola.
What is the question? Sorry.
Question is basically why are how many countries are following a serious practice of or achievement of the sustainable development goals. For that, Stanislav already answered from the European perspective, but we wanted to know from the Asian and Indian or other country perspective.
I think that we need to include the SDGs in sort of like we need to do this like include them in our legal framework. Otherwise, it's not going to be. I mean, we may celebrate certain days of the year as are dedicated to certain SDGs, but beyond that, it would not probably go beyond a school project or a college project. So I think it's important to include this in the legal framework as far as India is concerned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Agatha. Lola, would you like to respond on this question?
Yeah, I mean, it's just to kind of parrot what you've already said, there has to be governance and checks and balances to make sure people are meeting or at least working towards these goals. So that needs to be put in legally, financially, structurally, through different industries to gauge. Now, I mean, I live in Sweden, and Sweden has very strict guidelines in terms of trying to make sure that everything that's being done is meeting those goals. But yeah, it all comes down to governance, right? And making sure that it's part of the business operation, and then there are checks and balances to check. Is your company putting out a sustainability report at the end of the year? Things like that. So yeah, it boils down to governance.
Okay, thank you, Lola. We'll take
I would say from the
yeah, please, please.
from the U.S. perspective, I'm speaking from my limited view of personal knowledge, so I'm not speaking on behalf of the United States, but I will say that I feel we lag what is taking place in Europe. And I say that on two counts. The first is the SDGs are not in the popular consciousness among the people I know the way they are in Europe and other parts of the world. For example, there's an organization that I follow called THSDGs, and they are a movement. And there are, I believe it may have been founded in the US, although don't quote me on that, but beyond THSDGs, I am really not familiar with, a movement of a group of people that are really making the SDGs a priority. However, I will say, interestingly, and kind of counterintuitively to me, there are a number of major financial services firms and investment companies that are really driving sustainability and green investment as being their criteria for who they're doing business with. For example, and again, I'm speaking off the top of my head here, but I believe that Goldman Sachs, really has been outspoken about their requirement for some of the companies that they invest in need to meet certain levels of sustainability. So, I think that, this is probably an American point of view, but at the end of the day, the markets are what make a lot of things reality. And so I do see that happening here, but it's, I would say that we're behind the curve.
Thank you, Meg. Thank you for your perspective. And we'll take the last question from Shraddha Bhatt. The question is how digital tourism justifies the lack of manpower or unemployment in the industry. To what extent it is acceptable by the world? Anyone can answer this question, I feel.
I mean, I can jump in and take that. I don't think it's actually taking jobs away. It's actually just retooling and upskilling, so people can then have more opportunities to work within the industry. So that is kind of the, I call it the myth of digitalization. It's like the more innovative we become, the less, the more jobs people are going to lose. But I actually see it as the opposite. It's actually helping, giving people more opportunities and more skill sets to keep being productive, to keep contributing to the industry, to keep earning an income and to keep working. So that's how I see it. It's actually a good thing, innovation, because it just helps, adds new skills. So
Okay, thank you. Any other the speaker would like to respond on that? Otherwise, would like I would like to close the session.
I would just want to add
Yeah,
that
please.
I agree completely with Lola that it's an opportunity rather than an impediment, and you just have to do it right in terms of reskilling and retooling the stakeholders, the right stakeholders, and identifying the right stakeholders is probably the right good place to start. I'm saying right too many times, so I'll just stop.
Okay.
I would also say that, echo that, and speaking about it from the perspective of Flip the Lens, it is really empowering a role in tourism that I feel very strongly is so important, and that is the guides. And, our product is structured to empower guides. And I mean, I work with guides all over the world, and I find them to be just such fantastic ambassadors. I mean, they're so knowledgeable, and I believe it's a profession that you are called to. You really have to have a certain skill set and a certain temperament, and the idea behind Flip the Lens is to further empower those people to really create the brand for their local community through video, and be a co-creator and how their destination is depicted, over the wires. So I think digital presents the opportunity for people to enlarge their existing roles.
Okay, nice. Thank you, Meg. With this, I would like to close up by thanking Meg, Stanislav, Tathagata, Lola for sharing your experience and insights on the topic of digital tourism and sustainable development goals. Thank you all. And
Thank you.
The participants.
thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
It was a privilege.
National Institute of Tourism and Hospitality Management, nurturing excellence, serving success.